On this week's episode of the Pit Therapy Podcast, we are talking about the band Shai Hulud. These guys have had a lot of member turnover, but their one consistent has been Matt Fox. He is credited with coining the term Metalcore, even though he now considers Shai Hulud more of a progressive, melodic hardcore band. We talk about how Chad Gilbert from New Found Glory was their second vocalist, being only 14 at the time of joining. You guys know we are suckers for melodic hardcore, so this was a fun band to go back through and really dig into their albums. And we're looking forward to catching these guys at Furnace Fest. Thanks for listening, and let's open this pit up.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Pit Therapy Podcast. I am Kyle, and we're joined with Trevor and Josh. So what's up, guys?
Not a lot. How was surviving your storm tornado yesterday?
Dude, there's people in like the neighboring neighborhood that just got power on like maybe 3 hours ago.
Like your immediate neighborhood or just outside of you?
Like you cross one street out of our neighborhood and they just got power.
That's insane. That sucks so bad.
Yeah. Dude, I sent you guys the videos and stuff. It was wild, man. And yeah, woke up at 6 a.m. to sirens going off and my wife screaming to get in our shelter. And
so that happens at 6 a.m. and about 6:15, you're walking outside filming because you're now a weather expert. And you told me you were watching stuff on YouTube and feel comfortable walking outside in tornado warnings.
Look, man, we can get into like what I've learned because there's like telltale signs on the radar of typically where like tornadoes drop. There's this thing called a hook echo, and the hook echo was like the town south of us. So I was fairly confident from my amateur knowledge that I was not going to die walking outside. So yeah, I took a chance. Plus, dude, it's Texas. I wasn't the only guy out there because I walked out and was looking and I turned and my neighbor's standing on his back porch and we started talking for a little bit while the sirens are going off.
So here we go. We're covering geography. We cover math. We now cover storm chasing. You learned it all here.
I know. I suck at math. I suck at geography. I suck at all that stuff, but I've learned a thing or two about the atmosphere. So
I've always wanted to see a tornado after watching Twister as a kid.
Didn't like a bunch of people die in Twister?
No, like
I don't remember.
One dad, but she like does the same thing all growing up. Like she just wants to see the tornado get super close to it. But
yeah,
I don't know. Like I was telling you the other day, like my in-laws, like one of them grew out there in North Dakota or whatever. And they saw that stuff all the time, but they said it's always interesting to see somebody who's like been through like 20 of those or like their whole lives for somebody who sees it for the first time. Cause there's like two different reactions. You got the one reaction of the person seeing it the first time is like, we need to get the shelter and this, that, or the other, blah, blah, blah. Then you got the people that have been through it like 30 years that are like sitting out on their porch for like,
yeah.
That can even see it coming. They're like, it's fine.
We know this family that like their parents live in a town like in the northern part of Dallas, like the very tip of the whole metroplex. And they're just like, they're older, right? But they're like, like if I die, I die. Like they just like, they don't even get into a shelter or anything. They just like lay in bed and just like try and fall back asleep with it. They like, don't care. They're just like, whatever,
Even like the earth, you were still living here in 2020, right? I don't remember.
Yeah, that was the year I moved.
So that was the year of the earthquake.
I do remember the earthquakes.
And like, the earthquake, like we've never really been through one that crazy. So a lot for us was like, oh, this is insane. But then the guy that I worked with is from California and he was like, that's pretty normal. And I'm like, that's normal. I'm like, I don't want to live there. That shouldn't be normal.
Right.
It was weird, man. Like literally feeling the ground move. It was an awkward feeling.
It's not even that. I felt like you could hear it before it happened.
Yeah.
Like it's like you heard like the rocks moving underneath you, and then all of a sudden it just like starts jolting,
Yeah.
Like, did you guys ever feel any of the aftershocks like days after?
Yeah.
So I don't know what you guys were doing for work at the time, but at the time I was in a sheet metal shop. And so this happened, like 7:30, somewhere between there in the
Yeah.
morning. It was right
Yeah,
after our
it was
morning
early.
meeting.
Yeah.
And it was still kind of dark outside. And dude, I was dying. So I'm putting like this piece of sheet metal in the press brake, and like I just felt weird. Like I felt like something was wrong with me. Like what is going on with my body?
Yeah.
And I went, oh, that's weird. I went stuck the sheet metal back in, did again, and I was just kind of doing this, and I was like, I started looking around, dude. I can see all the sheet metal like racks start moving, and then I can just hear crashing, and then the lights cut out and it goes completely black. So in my mind, I'm like, this is
It's
how I
the
die.
end of days.
This is how I'm gonna go, I guess. So
Yeah.
my desk had like a 2 feet of overhang, and so I like crawled under that kind of, and I'm like hanging out, and I'm like, this table isn't gonna do anything. Like I'm gonna die, whatever. So then it gets done, the big one, and there's like total different responses. So I got like some guys that are running out of the building as fast as they can, which is like what you're not supposed to do in an earthquake. And they're like getting in their cars and they're just bailing. They're gone. And then I got some people walking out back from the grinding room that are coming out going like, what's everybody doing? And I'm like, what is wrong with you? But like there was this, it was really funny. So there was this kid that I worked with. He had to have been like 6'7", 6'8". He's super tall. Like tall enough to where like he had to take work off one time because he got a concussion from hitting his head like going down the stairs. Just like biffed his head and got a huge concussion. Super tall. Somehow he got himself wedged underneath this parts cart, his entire body. And I look around the corner and he's got his arms out like this and he's pushing himself across the shop floor, going like hanging out in this cart, going through the shop, like trying to skate all the way to his car. And I just started busted out laughing. And I'm like, this is insane. But
It's crazy.
That's weird.
Aren't you supposed to try and leave the building?
I've heard not to because if depending on what happens with power lines, if you have anything crash and goes outside, you're done. They honestly say to stay put. They say not even to get like directly underneath something. They call it like being in like the A-frame part of something, so it's like
Like a
not
door
being
frame.
directly under, but like right off to the side. Because usually, if something falls, it's going to collapse and kind of land on an angle. But
What else, man? We're gonna be saving people's lives. You know,
yeah,
they're gonna be listening to us and learning.
Or someone's gonna die and be like,
Someone's gonna die and we're gonna get
stupid
sued.
therapy.
Yeah, we're gonna get sued. Do your own research, man. That's all I say.
I do not condone anything on this podcast.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Well, music wise, anything new that's come out? I don't know.
we talked about the 4 Year Strong. I haven't listened to it yet. You
It's
listened to it, Trevor?
interesting. Yeah, I've
It's
listened to it
alright.
a couple times. So you listened, Kyle?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I don't hate it. It's definitely different. It felt, and I feel like this is kind of the same with all the songs so far that they've released. It felt super repetitive.
Kinda.
So
I don't know.
that was the only thing. I didn't mind it. I thought it was a good song. I actually like the like kind of change of sound that they're doing so far in this album.
It's like very 90s influenced. Very 90s influenced. So I don't get the repetitiveness. Like I can see why you're saying that, but they break it up pretty well. Like that opening riff is pretty 90s heavy, aggressive, but then the chorus or the pre-chorus, it feels like old 4 Year. So I enjoy it. I probably like it better than the other two that they put out.
No, that second one was the heavy one is real good.
Daddy of Mine.
Yeah, I'm down with that song.
Yeah, that's true. The art on it though, dude, it's some creepy crap right now. Like the dog that's like looks super stoned.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Nothing new. I kind of went down an old kick of Census Fail and Saves the Day, kind of with that tour that got announced. It's coming through Salt Lake, not till November 30th, but dude, playing Let It Enfold You like front to back and what is it? Through Being Cool or something like that.
Through Being Cool. Yeah.
Through Being Cool. Dude, two like iconic records from both bands. Like to me, that's nuts. So I've been on a kick of listening to both those guys.
Are you listening to like all of their stuff or just those two albums?
More Saves the Day than Census Fail. For Census Fail, for me, it was like the first three records I got way into, and then I kind of pick and choose off of the rest.
Yeah.
Okay,
So-
hold on.
It's kind of where I'm at too.
When you say the first three, are you going
I'm
back to the EP?
I'm including the EP in that.
Dude, that
Because
EP is so good.
Yeah.
Like, I love that EP, and I love Let It Enfold You. So you're
Mhm.
talking, I don't even remember what the EP's called.
It's,
The EP, Let It Enfold You, and then
Still Searching.
Still Searching. Yeah, those albums are incredible.
Yeah. The Saves the Day stuff is really good too. I don't know if you've really listened to their stuff because they have an album right before Through Being Cool.
Yeah.
That's really good. And then
I feel like their stuff's held up really well.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're really good live. I feel like they're pretty equivalent to like Newfound Glory as far as like
Mhm.
performance wise.
Yeah.
They're just really good, but they're unique too. Like you can pick them out. You know, they're pretty defined.
Yeah. I'm pumped to see them. I'm so excited for that tour. I haven't listened to the other band. Isn't it called like Prize Horse or something?
I think so.
That's on the Koyo tour,
Oh, you're right. That is the Koyo tour.
which I just got my tickets to. So
Yeah, I got
pumped for
tickets to that one as well.
I can't remember. It's been 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks since we talked. Did we already talk about the Story So Far record? I don't remember.
is that out?
The Story So Far song?
I thought the record was out. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't
No,
think
their
so.
record's out.
No, it's not.
No
Yeah, it
way.
is. Hold
If
on.
that thing's out and we haven't like listened to it yet,
Hold on. I could be blowing smoke up your butt. Let me.
Yeah, they just released the All This Time single. Is the last thing they
Oh,
released.
sorry. There's like 3 songs released.
Yeah, yeah.
For some reason, I was thinking it was really. I don't know why I thought.
Release countdown, 22
June
days.
21st.
Yeah, so it comes out in 22 days.
the other
22
band
days,
on,
1 hour, 30 minutes to be exact. Because Spotify's counting down.
the other band on the Census Fell show is Narrowhead. Have you ever listened
Oh,
to
dude, Narrowhead's tight.
Oh, really?
I haven't.
Yeah.
I've
They're
never
like
heard of
a shoegazy, like, it's like a Citizen title fight type Balance and Composure type thing, which Balance and Composure just announced they're going to release a new album. But
Interesting.
Narrowhead's kind of cool. I like
That's
them.
cool.
I wonder, are they a New Jersey band? Is that why they're on?
No, they're a Texas band, I think.
So much for the New Jersey takeover.
If it was real New Jersey takeover Thursday, be on it with them.
I know. What the heck? Come on, Census
Maybe
Fell.
I don't know where they're from. Maybe I was wrong.
I think it says Dallas. I think you're right. Yeah, American rock band from Dallas. So, y'all messed up.
I've been going down the rabbit hole with some of the like OG Texas hardcore bands. So I listened to a lot of this band called Iron Age, which is like the biggest influence to Power Trip.
Mm-hmm.
So they're sick. Listen to a bunch of like Bitter End.
Bitter End's good.
There's like some cool hardcore that was around back in the day here, and there's still good stuff now that we're going to start talking about more later. But
You know, it's like always wild to me, and like I don't know if you guys feel this way, and we'll get into the band, but I've never really quite figured out or really understood why, like, Salt Lake has awesome bands, right? Like Arizona's had really good bands, California has really good bands, Texas had really good bands, but it feels like it's never been like a shared tight community like it is back east. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's just because of the
Like
scale of what the West is size wise.
That's the only thing I can think of. Like for us to like, for a lot of people to go to say, let's say the 3 main places to play a show that are close, it'd be like Vegas, Salt Lake, and Boise.
Yeah.
So on average, if you're going to drive to Boise, you're 5-6 hours. You're going to drive Vegas,
Mhm.
you're 6-7 hours with an hour change. And it's like, and you live kind of in a main city, and I don't think bands are willing to just play Vegas and skip all of those. So they'll just come on through.
Yeah.
It's the only thing I could ever think of.
Well, I mean, you think about like, okay, you're a New York hardcore band. There's more people on the island in New York than the whole state of Utah, you know? And then you drive or you take a train 30 minutes away and there's a whole nother city the size of the state of Utah,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I just like, just from a percentage wise, you're going to get more people that are involved and part of the scene, and that culture is going to be bigger because of it, you know? And that's why I think that, because going through and listening to all these Texas hardcore bands, it's kind of crazy that like the only one that I guess in the like recent modern era that really made it was Bitter End, right? Like they played, and I guess Power Trip, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like you got to think Texas is the size of all these states put together. Like if you're a big band in Texas, you don't really have to go anywhere, which I guess is what it's like back east too, right? Like you can play 4 or 5 towns in Texas and get like a brand new market in every town, and you only have to drive 3 hours because of how big it is, you know?
Right.
There's a lot of big Texas bands. I mean, Kubla Khan's like one of the biggest bands out right now.
Yeah.
So,
but you got to think like even then, like how many bands though have come and gone, and because like I was thinking about that with Salt Lake too. Like, were there any really big hardcore like bands, like hardcore bands from Salt Lake that really made it like huge?
Clear. But
Okay.
they were only around for like a short period of time.
Yeah.
I think that that's probably more the point that you're trying to make, Kyle, right? Like the longevity of it. Like
Sure.
there's one thing about like the East Coast, Long Island, New Jersey, all of these places, they produce bands that are on their 20, 30 year.
Like Madball, right? Like Madball's like exactly.
I don't know if we've had that, you know? So maybe it is. Maybe it's just like, I feel like the problem with like Utah and like these scenes is we're secluded. It's exactly what you're saying. It's 6 hours to the next market. And so because of that, you have the generations growing up together, but then they phase out together.
Yeah.
And the new generation starts and grows up together and then phases out together. I think one of the cool things is what we're starting to see in Salt Lake is some of these older bands are starting to play a couple reunion shows here and there. And the younger kids are actually starting to come out for the older bands. So that's the kind of feel that you get on those back east scenes. The young kids are included into the bands earlier, creating longevity and all this stuff.
I guess I mean it like, so say like if you saw a tour like Madball, Wisdom in Chains, and like Shattered Realm, like that's not pretty unheard of,
right?
And that's been pretty continuous. Those are like 3 big bands for their own areas and like have their own backing and their own like career in it. I don't feel like it, at least what I can think of off the top of my head, I don't think I've ever seen something like that come from the West Coast. It's usually like one
exactly.
band, and then
California would be the exception, right?
A little bit.
Because you have tons of, Terror, Rotting Out.
Well, I mean, like Zabalba came through, right?
Right.
But they didn't come through with like another crazy big following band. It was just like locals played.
Terror might be the only. I mean, are they from California, or is it just?
I think they're based out of California now, but I don't know if all of them live there.
Okay, because I know Scott's from Buffalo, right?
Yeah, but Terror, yeah, because so like Buried Alive is based out of New York, and that was Scott's band before Terror.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like maybe that's their connection back east, but like Terror tours everywhere, but it's never like a West Coast band bringing their own tour with them. Like, yeah. I know like there was a little Drain. One that, yeah, there's Drain, but I mean, when Drain came through Salt Lake last year, you know, they came with some like Torrena and some other bands, but it wasn't anything like any big band that could tour on their own. Like if Torrena came through by themselves, would you go?
No, it'd be playing the small local venue, right? It'd be local bands supporting Torrena coming through.
Now, if Shattered Realm came, you would go. if Madball came, you would go, or if like Wisdom and Change, you would probably, or the crowds they would draw, it would draw enough for people to come out just to see them.
Yeah.
That's more what I'm getting
This
at.
is, I don't know. This is a really interesting discussion. And this is going to cut into time talking about the band, but whatever. I don't care.
Well, you know what? This is actually going to bleed into this band because Shai Hulud started in Florida and specifically relocated to New York to be able to do stuff like that, to be part of a different scene where it was easier to play shows, easier to do members and stuff like that.
And that's the point I was going to make is I wonder how much of it, because as I'm getting into Texas hardcore, it's very metal influenced, right? Like I would argue that like Power Violence came from Texas, right? Like it's very, very metal influenced. And the reason why is because who are some of the biggest bands of all time to come out of Texas? Like Pantera, you know, like all these kind of thrashy metal bands. Like that's just what Texas is known for, right? So like you go to California and you're like, it's very, very punk influence. It's very like a lot of that kind of stuff, right? Like California music, we don't like the Offspring, you know, like freaking, what's the band I'm thinking of? The Every Morning There's a Halo hanging in front. What's
Sugar Ray?
Like Sugar Ray, like that kind of music, you know? Like I'm just saying that I think that it might have been easier in the Northeast as well, because that's where like this music came from.
Hardcore.
Right? Like you had CBGBs back in like the 60s and 70s playing. They had Minor Threat, all the Washington, D.C. like triangle area right there. You know, so it probably just was easier for those bands because that culture was already made where hardcore coming to Texas, like you're introducing this to metalheads, you know, it's not like punk hardcore influenced culture, and probably the same for California, you know, same with Salt Lake City.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think California always carried this theme. Like, okay, if you met somebody that you went to school with randomly, not tied in hardcore at all, it was like, I'm going to move to California. It's because it carried this like, oh, I want to be to California to become an actor or to become famous or to become a musician. That was like, it was like somebody saying like that was programmed in your brain. I'm going to move to LA and make it big. What does that mean? Like, why can't you do that here? So I feel like maybe that's like the culture, like even bled into the hardcore scene of like, hey, it's a little easier because our state is literally based on
entertainment.
Exactly.
Probably easier to find studios, producers, stuff like that, because they're all out there anyways, you know.
Yeah, like in Salt Lake, it'd be way easier for me to find 5 wives than it would be for like 5 members that want to play in a band.
It's
true.
Sure. Unless you're playing like some gospel, you know, youth church type music, then you're probably like,
you know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe it's just maybe a lot of it has to do with culture. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting thing, you know. Every time I tell people that I'm going to Alabama for Furnace Fest, they're like, "Oh, I didn't even know like Alabama allowed that music."
Yeah, that's
like, well, they actually have like Birmingham has a thriving scene,
an incredible scene. Yeah,
it's weird to think about too because you think Alabama, like my cousin twice removed, like it's
right.
It's very weird, you know. But I don't know, it's kind of cool because it's like they're away from everything and it's their own thing. So like they make their own rules. They're not trying to follow any rules. It's just like, no, you're here. This is what we do. If you don't like it, leave.
And dude, that's what Salt Lake is.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people who are outside of the scene or like not in bands that come through know that Salt Lake is a thriving hardcore scene? You know,
it's crazy too to hear that like you hear stories of people in like Pennsylvania. I don't know. I'm just naming some random places where they're like, oh, like all this like fighting invisible ninjas is stupid. And we never did that in our scene. And those guys would get beat up, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, we were swinging for bands we shouldn't have been, you know, but that's like that's the rules that we had in Utah. And you're not going to go there and tell us different, you know, like that is, we're going to talk about Shai Hulud, and one of the most like aggressive shows I've ever been to was with Newfound Glory, and people were swinging just as hard for Newfound Glory than they were for Shai Hulud, you know? So I don't know. It's interesting. It's cool. I don't know. It's cool.
Probably a good segue.
So we're going to be talking about Shai Hulud if you haven't gathered that already. And
who is that?
It's the big worm from Dune.
Yeah, this episode's actually about reading books.
Or the movie. I guess the second movie just came out. I haven't seen it yet, but I heard it was cool.
Yeah, I fell asleep during the first one on a plane.
I mean, if we're really going to get into it, I don't know that the movie's translated very well if you've read the books. So it's weird. But anyways, we're talking about the band Shai Hulud, which is probably named after a giant worm. The band started in 1995, and they've cycled through quite 30? A bit of 30 members or something. The one consistent has been their guitarist, Matt Fox, who, I guess is the brains behind everything Shai Hulud.
Writes most of their stuff and does the lyrics.
And deserves to be in the Hall of Fame of whatever, because pioneered the term metalcore. He coined it, supposedly, is what I read.
It's really weird that I saw that they were labeled as a metalcore band. Would you guys consider them metalcore?
So early definition, yes. Current metalcore, no. And from what I read and interviews I've listened to, he doesn't consider them metalcore anymore either. He considers them progressive hardcore, is how he's like, if you want to label it something, like, we're not metalcore. He's like, we don't really break down. We don't really mosh parts. There's parts that you can mosh to, but it's like not an intention of ours. We're playing like progressive hardcore.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Progressive melodic metal or melodic hardcore, I guess, is what I would categorize it as.
Yeah. But interesting.
Yeah. So what do you guys remember about this band? When did you first hear them? What was your experience listening through the albums?
So I think the first time I heard them was, I think it was on accident. Let me just start with that. I can't remember if they played their show or not, but I remember looking up an old tour when I was looking up stuff about that band, Elijah. And there was a tour that came through at Boomba in 2007. And Sky Eats Airplane played, and Elijah played, and then it says Shai Hulud was on the tour. I don't remember them playing, but at the same time, I don't remember much of that show either. I just remember I was there because that was one of the only times I got to see Elijah.
I'm pretty sure I was at that with you because we ate hot dogs with Sky Eats Airplane before the show.
Okay, so you were there. I don't remember them playing though. Do you?
I don't either. No, I don't.
So here's the hard part for me. Either they did play, and I just didn't care because I didn't know them, or they didn't play, and I'm off the hook for that show.
Or we didn't see them.
Right. Yeah. So, but they were on that tour, and it says, like, at least looking up in the internet, it says that they played that show, but who knows? The one show that I do remember them playing was opening for that tour for, well, it was Set Your Goals, Newfound Glory.
Bayside, I think, was on it.
I just remember they opened. And it was at
Newfound Glory, Bayside, Set Your Goals, Verse, Shai Hulud, and Fireworks, I think was.
I don't think Verse played.
Verse didn't play, and I don't think Fireworks played. I think it was Shai Hulud, Set Your Goals, Bayside, Newfound Glory on the Utah date.
Okay. That's possible, because I may not even stay for Bayside, but I remember, so they opened. And I just remember, like, I didn't know who they were, and I remember, like, kind of standing in line outside of the venue, and the venue was called In the Venue. So that might get confusing as we talk about that show, but I just remember it was like, oh, dude, they're way good. They're like a hardcore band and blah, blah, blah. And so at that point, like when I was getting into hardcore, a lot of this stuff was like word of mouth. And so I didn't know like any of the songs, but I just knew like my friends were into the band. And so like I was going to be into the band and what have you. But I know you were kind of talking about like that was one of the most aggressive shows you had been to probably at that point. Yeah, so they started playing, and like the pit opens up, and it wasn't just like our age of friends in there. There were like some older dudes in there too, and that's why I was like, oh, this is a little weird because I hadn't really been around that yet. It was just like friends around our age, so like 17, 18 Well, I guess probably like 15 to 20-year-old people. Now all of a sudden, like a couple guys that are about 30 years old show up, and I'm like, this is a little weird. And they started going super, super hardcore. Like a different level of like moshing that I wasn't used to. I was kind of explaining this to Trevor the other night, and like there's like a different level of craziness that like some of these older guys have, and they don't mean anything by it. That's just how they grew up doing it. So like we're watching like I'm watching this guy mosh. You know, he's well into his 40s, and this young kid can't be much older than 18, 19 years old, and he like kicked back at the dude, and the dude just like picked him up and drop kicked him halfway through the game. And like you'd almost like think like that was a super dick move, but it's just I've been around that enough to know like no, that's just what they do. That's their welcoming generation, you know? But yeah, so I'm watching these older dudes mosh, and I'm just like, I was terrified. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, I don't want to get hit by this dude. I don't know him, and he looks way scarier than I've ever seen somebody. And like, what if he wants to come outside and kill me? Like, I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like moshed a little, kind of hung out in the back, but you know, then we got to see Set Your Goals and New Found Glory, which both those sets were insane too.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got to see them. I want to say it was in 2013 with Trial. And they played at this, it was weird. We were doing shows at a place called Foursquare Church. The place literally closed down because it was literally in a sinkhole, and the entire like building was collapsing. So like you'd get done moshing and you'd go downstairs in the basement to use the bathroom, and the pillars were literally cracked. There was like cement like down on the ground. I don't know if you guys ever went there, but dude, it was wild. It was in a literal church. Like, you know, like in your guys' church where you have like your gym behind the chapel or whatever. Yeah, it was basically that. And they just put up boards to block the chapel.
It's crazy.
But
that place was fun.
But yeah, they I remember them playing there. Like Trial was pretty cool to see, but same thing like Shai Hulud opened for them, and it was pretty cool. So and like then I kind of learned, you know, like that Chad Gilbert did vocals early on in the band, and that's kind of how their tie-in was, and they signed on with the dude that was in Unbroken for a while, or maybe he still is, I can't remember. And just kind of had all those ties to Shai Hulud. But I will say this was definitely a band that I kind of had to go back and listen through, because I like missed out. I don't know if they were saying other stuff at the time. They just never made it into something I really liked. I know in like 2008, like trying to get stuff like online still wasn't, you know, real easy to get. And so at that point I was super lazy. If it wasn't easy for me to get, I probably wouldn't have gotten it.
Yeah, no, for sure. What about you, Trevor?
So I keep racking my brain. I don't know if I was at that New Found Glory show. But I do remember Shai Hulud coming from that show. So whether I was there or whether you guys just came back and was like, dude, like we'll get Shai Hulud kind of thing, that was also my introduction. And I think it was the same thing. Like, you know, Chad Gilbert used to be the front man for them. Like that's why they were playing, and like going down that whole rabbit hole. What year was that show?
2009?
2009?
No, to Set Your Goals?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was 2009. 2008 or 2009.
It was 2008.
If it was, I don't know why I wouldn't have been there at 9. Yeah, so it probably was 8. But I think it was before Misanthropy Pure, that album. So I think the first thing that I heard was That Within Blood Ill Tempered. I think that was the first album that I listened to. And this is a band that, like I was saying, they write, Matt Fox very specifically has said, I write music for emotion. Like, I don't care if you can mosh to it, like whatever, you know what I mean? And I think that's actually why I kind of glossed over them. I've always listened to them, but I've never paid attention to them, if that makes sense. So like, I'm the same as Josh. When we went through and listened, I had to like pay attention to what I was listening to really form my opinion, because they have songs that do have breakdowns. There are mosh parts, but in other bands that we're listening to, like melodic hardcore, like Kyle, you've said before, like The Ghost Inside, that's a band that probably came from these guys, right? My Child, My Bride has specifically said Shai Hulud was a big influence.
Yeah, same with 100th.
100th. All those bands, though, nearly 90%, 95% of their songs, it has a breakdown in there.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's moshcore, right? If we want to go back to On Broken Wings, everyone has a breakdown. Everyone wants Kiss to Swing and stuff like that. Shai Hulud was different. They were a band that they wrote the music that they wanted to play. Their views on the world, right? Naming everything misanthropy and a profound hatred of man kind of thing. Like they couldn't care less about you. They are here writing what they want to play, and it even stands out in like how they play their music and everything like that. And so going back and like seeing and like listening to these guys, it's incredible. You can hear the melodic hardcore influence that has echoed in the majority of what we love, right? Yeah. But they do it different. There's something different about these guys. And I think that that's why they stood out to the older generation. You know what I mean? I think that they were different than anything else going on at that time.
Right.
There's a couple bands I think that tie more into like an emotional side of hardcore. I don't know. Have you guys ever listened to All Else Failed?
Mm-mm.
So they're kind of sporadic. I think they're a little harsher to get into, but they definitely drag at some kind of emotion. There's another band called The Carrier. I don't know if you guys have ever listened to them.
I've heard of The Carrier, yeah.
But same kind of deal. They're not really moshy, but they've definitely got an emotional tie. And I think a lot of those bands almost stemmed off like trying to be more of like a, I don't know, like a darker side of like bands like Madball, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say like a band like Madball is like very moshy, right? But like their lyrics actually mean something, and they're more kind of like traditional hardcore. But now you throw in like emotion to it,
yeah.
And
you
maybe
think of a band like Defeater, right?
Like Defeater,
yeah. Like it's heavy, it's hardcore, but it's not moshy. It's very emotional. It's very lyric driven. It's very story driven.
Kind of like very lyric driven. Like you're not trying to like jump on somebody's head, right? You're almost at this point. You're like, I might cry screaming to this entire song.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
you're like that. So
yeah. So I got into these guys. Same thing around that time. I saw them at Newfound Glory. It was a different experience. You know, like you were saying, Josh. I remember. Like this was the heyday, 2008, 2009. Like I've been in a bunch of mosh pits. I've been in some pretty aggressive situations at shows. Like this is not my first rodeo. I saw a bunch of older dudes show up and I was like, I'm not about to get hit by a 40-year-old with face tattoos. And so I was like, I stood in the back and I was like, this is a good learning experience. You know, like I'm going to watch the guys who've been doing this for a real long time. And it was, I don't know. I think that mentality is lost on kids today, to know where you stand in pecking orders and learn from the older generation, you know?
Yeah. It's like the upside and downside of social media, right? Or any platform, doesn't matter what it is. We'll use YouTube, for example. It's great. It's gotten all this stuff out even farther, right? And it's taken it places where it could have never gone on its own. So for that, it's like to be super grateful for. However, you start throwing in things like, we have our own disagreements with this, but like celebrities wearing like hardcore t-shirts, right?
Yeah.
Or like people watching a YouTube video and thinking like, oh yeah, I can do that. And they put this whole persona on Instagram and now they're only showing up there to get the picture to get them the next amount of likes. And it's like, okay, one, you don't get it. And two, if you actually end up getting like caught up in something and then you're like, well, this is what I wanted. I'm like, well, this is the real deal. Like you say, aggressive situations. It doesn't really have to be a fight. It doesn't have to be anything like that, but it can be like, That's I don't know.
It's like the new person who shows up and tries to crowd kill. Like you can't do that.
It's all fun and games till somebody hits you back, and then you're like, well, I thought you were just supposed to sit there and take it. I don't know, man.
Well, yeah, it's like, well, no, this is what they do on Instagram. I'm like, hey, first of all, that dude's with all of his friends, pelting on his friends for one. And if you notice, there's only like 20 of them, and that's it. And that's just what they're doing.
Yeah.
So if you want to do that in the basement with your friends, you go for it. But the rules change, and you find out kind of what you're made out of. The bigger, faster, bigger show that you go to, or you don't need 20 of your friends. It's just you,
right?
Like,
if you're going to do that, hold your own. If you can't hold your own, don't do that.
Well, and it goes both ways, right? So, like, if you're gonna because I've had this happen before. I've had a kid pelt me right in the face, and like, yeah, he got me, but I got him back. You know what I mean? And like, because I'm not going to get punched in the face like that and have some kid walk away because he's moshing on me. Oh yeah, I spun him around, I hit him, and I'm like, allegedly I hit him, but
sure,
everyone just kind of stood there and shrugged their shoulders, like, what do you think was going to happen? Right. Why would you hit? Out of anybody in the room, why did you hit him? But it's kind of that principle. Like, it shouldn't be me. It's just in general of like, if you're going to throw a punch, you're going to take a punch.
Yeah.
If you don't want to throw a punch, hang out in the back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are times, like I've even said it when we went to Zabalba. I'm like, I've got work the next day. Like, I'm not getting close to this. You know what I mean? There's times and places to mosh. There's times and places to do things. If you got to go to work, don't get in the pit, right? Like, because there's that chance you're going to get destroyed. So
you just be a pit potato with me.
I know. Yeah. Did I still watch that video? It is the funniest thing ever.
So this took a weird turn. We'll get back on subject.
Shai Hulud.
Shai Hulud. Anyways, so yeah, I'm a sucker for melodic hardcore. I've always said it. So as long as I've been getting back into hardcore, however long I've been listening to it, I've just kind of always listened to these guys. I've always appreciated their sound. It's very different, very unique. What's interesting was going back and reading and learning more about Matt Fox. So, obviously he's on the older side because their first album was like 96. And so he'd already, kind of been making like, obviously you don't just like wake up one day and like, okay, I'm going to write a incredible album, genre defining sound. So, he'd been making like writing and or whatever, playing music for a little bit. So what's funny was he was talking about how his influences were like Kiss and like 80s metal and rock. And I just thought it was super interesting to go from like Kiss to then writing stuff for Shai Hulud. Like that dot connection just seemed really strange to me, but whatever. I'm glad he could do it.
Well, the interesting thing is he said that Metallica, the melodicness of Metallica is what influenced his guitar writing the most. And I've never sure, Metallica does have melodic parts, but it's not Shai Hulud.
You're listening to Metallica and be like, oh, this is very melodic.
Yeah, exactly. So
that was interesting. That's like their version of like rebellious rock though, right?
Yeah.
Because like their parents, probably came off of like, I don't know.
Well, he was talking about how none of his parents even liked music, never listened to music, weren't musical at all. Like this all came from him,
So this is probably like 80s era of like Metallica, probably Queen as well. So like bands like, Led Zeppelin and those guys have kind of died off. Now you're getting to like the 80s era. I mean, I think there's a lot of influence from a lot of those bands. Even like Set Your Goals, if you listen to some of their lyrics, like where their influences come from, a lot of it has to do with like 80s, like butt rock almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll have to go listen to more. It just, I don't know, that connection was just very interesting, but
yeah, it's cool.
I think the hardest part is understanding that this dude created this sound in the mid 90s. Right. Like that just seems like such a jump. Like sure, Metallica, Pantera, Slayer, all those guys were like heavier, but to go from that to what he was writing in the mid 90s, same with, you think about like Earth Crisis and stuff too, or Integrity. Like, it's just wild that in the mid 90s, they're coming up with that sound, because that seems like a huge gap to me, right? To
Mhm.
go from something like Metallica to like Earth Crisis, you know, and
Yeah.
maybe I'm just looking into that more. But one thing I thought was interesting too is this the best band we've talked about that has cycled through so many members? Because usually when we talk about bands that cycle through members, it's, oh yeah, they fell off really hard.
Who was the other band that had like 30 plus members that we talked about? There was
It was
one
one of Josh's
specifically.
bands, wasn't it?
I can't.
It wasn't from first to last, was it?
No.
They did. They cycled through a ton. I think maybe it was from first to last, who had like 27 members or something like that. I think that might be right. Anyways,
I can't remember.
I think that, like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the point you're getting at is the fact that they've continued to have like the same sound, producing top quality tier music, album after album after album. Like, that's actually, it's incredible that like he's been able to continue to do that. Now, the interesting thing about it is their albums start getting further and further and further apart because,
Yeah.
you know, like, I think he's just doing other projects. He's doing other things. Shai Hulud is just something where he's like, does anyone want to listen to us still?
Right.
You know, like, I think that the most interesting thing was in an interview I was listening to him from a couple years ago. He was talking about how they basically started back up. He's like, Shai Hulud hadn't put out anything since 2015. So this was 2022, because he's like, in 7 years, we hadn't put anything out. And then one day I got a text from their now vocalist who was like, dude, it's time. And he was just like, okay, here we go again. And then they had a huge reception. A ton of people wanted him to come back. They got invited to Furnace Fest, a few things along those lines. And like, their music still resonates with people, which is incredible.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why they're playing Furnace Fest. And they've played Furnace Fest a couple times in the last few years. So, you know, people still care about this band very much.
You know, what's crazy to think about Chad Gilbert, you know, how
he was 14 when he joined the band.
So like how your kid, so my daughter's like 6, you guys are like 7 or 8 or pretty close.
My son's 8.
9.
Yeah.
So kind of think about it. Like your kid is over like in another, what, like
5 years away
of being the same age Chad was to being a band like this. Are you okay with that?
I mean, if he's playing with adults like Chad was at this time, like, probably not.
Yeah, this is like the crazy thing. Like,
I'm glad that I'm not the only one thinking like this, because I was going to ask you guys, like, is it weird that they like invited a 14-year-old to just come play with them?
I don't know, like that whole band, Icy Stars, they were like, their singer was like 15 when they toured. Even
I get, like, if you're, so let's say Chad's 14 and like freshman in high school, and these guys are all seniors in high school.
They're like 18.
Like, that's one thing, but
Matt Fox is 7 years older than him. He was 21 when they got together.
I don't know that I'm cool with that.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm cool with it, but I would say I think it depends on how Chad was brought in, because they didn't seek Chad out. Chad was recommended by the dude leaving.
No, they did like tryouts for vocalists, didn't they?
Oh, I read that he was recommended by the dude leaving.
Yeah, the dude leaving was like, he was like, dude, you guys should grab. I think they called him Young Chad, is what they called him.
But I mean, I don't know. Think about it. Like if we went to, so like that band we've talked about, I think in the past, Mummy, or I think you have, I can't remember.
Yeah.
Those are all really young kids, right? I think they're all still in high school.
Yeah.
Say like, you know, I'm you know, much older than I'm 34, like probably old enough to be one of their dads. I don't know. But let's say if like their vocalist was really good, and say if like my band needed a vocalist, would it be weird for me to like ask like their 17-year-old singer to come play with a band, a bunch of like 34-year-olds?
Yeah.
I mean, but it's
for
the
local shows, probably not, right?
But even then, dude, like 14 compared to 17 is still very different.
Yeah, I don't know, because like I think I'd have to ask him. I can't remember how old he is. I think the drummer for Crow Killer, I think he's 26, 27. I'm 34. And
Yeah, but he was
Blake's
20.
Blake's 41 and Tyler's 41.
But he was 21 when you guys started Crow Killer, 2021, somewhere in there. That was about
I
7 years ago, right?
yeah, I think him and Mike are around the same age.
Okay. Once you're a legal adult, once you're out of high school, sure, more power to you. Go and hang around with 60-year-olds for all I care.
Well, okay.
Right? But,
Well, let me back up. Okay, so when we're getting off subject again, but when Close Grip went to Arizona, Mike wasn't 18. I think he was 16. So his dad signed over the rights to his child. He gave me a full thing, right, signing over the rights to his child to me to be responsible for his son. And me and Brad were 24 years old.
Is that legally binding?
I don't know, but like
just like write on a napkin.
But like as far as age concerned, he was like 16, we were 24. So there's 8 years.
yeah.
And
Listen,
then some of the other guys that came, they were about the same age, 16. Yeah.
Matt Fox himself, in the interview I listened to, said at the time it was kind of weird. Like once we were like a few years down the road, once he was a little bit older, it was a little bit more normal. Like today, a 7-year age gap, it's nothing. Like we can go chill, we can hang out, go to dinner. No one would think twice about it. When I was 21 and he was 14, it was a little weird, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
I mean, okay, like just, I mean, we don't have to spend the whole time on this because honestly, like it's just speculation. We don't know. Like Chad's mom could have been like the practices or something. Like I'm not
I'm not throwing shade at anything, right? The band was incredible.
And the dude could scream like because Hearts Once Nourished is an incredible album.
It's fantastic. And I was going to ask you guys, okay, I'm kind of calling BS. Like Chad might have said he was 14, but was it like the bench warmer scene where he comes walking out with the paper and the $20 bill? And he's like,
I'm 14.
He's like, I'm 12 years old. He's like, yep, he's good. Because
has anyone checked Chad's birth certificate? When was he actually born? He's like, turns out he's like a 65-year-old man.
See, I don't hate on it for this reason alone. And it's because I feel like this is a huge stepping stone for him to be able to play full-time for Newfound Glory a couple years later. And was one of the greatest bands to ever create. So that's the stepping stone that got him there. I'm cool with it.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to ask before, and we're not going to spend a ton of time on the albums because, like, let's be honest, it's not like there's huge sound changes or anything. Like, I think we can get through the albums pretty quick just talking about stuff that stood out to us.
Sure.
The last thing I want to ask about before we jump into the albums is, how do you guys feel about this artwork? I struggle, and I'm sure people will make fun of me for this, but I struggle with this kind of artwork. You okay? I struggle with this kind of artwork. I don't like the dark, demonic looking drawings that like you would get like Rorschach in a therapy session or something. You know what I mean? That's just not me.
So my opinion is I actually really like it, but it's because I think that they have always stuck to this type of imagery. Again, naming an album Misanthropy Pure, Profound Hatred of Man. Like they have forever portrayed this hatred of mankind, right? Like that's what misanthropy means, is like a hatred of man. And all of this stuff is very like death. It's rotting. It's a rotting culture. Mm-hmm. That's the way to describe it. It's a rotting culture. And that's why you'd be misanthropic, whatever. That word.
Misanthropic?
That's the one. That's the one. Yeah. And so like I think that the art style reflects the way that the band is trying to portray themselves. I'm cool with that. If they had this art style and they're singing about really happy things, not so much. You know what I mean?
No.
I like this kind of album album artwork, the thing that drives me nuts about it is I feel like when I see an album art like that, I'm like, this band's going to be crazy heavy. And they're just not that band. So it drives me nuts a little bit.
I mean, in 1997, they were.
But you know what I mean?
And I'll disagree with you because I think that what they've said, where they're trying to portray a specific emotion, they actually get that emotion across pretty well.
I mean, like I look at like that Within Blood. I feel like I'm going to listen to a disembodied record when I hear it, but it's not
True.
That's what I mean by heavy.
Yeah,
I know what you're
Emotionally,
saying.
sure, but you know,
Yeah.
like I feel like I'm going to get like a dude. This is going to be heavy. This is going to blow my speakers out. Like you're going to want to mosh to this, but this is probably a way good save saying it's heavy without being heavy.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Heavy
there
a
we
different
go.
way. Like it's
Check 'em
heavy
out.
with the vocals and emotions. But at the time when I heard this, it wasn't my thing. It's not what I was looking for.
Yeah. I get that. So, all right. Well, let's jump through some of the albums real quick. First EP is 1996, A Profound Hatred of Man. They re-released it in 2006 with some other songs that they added onto it. It's wild to me to think that the original 3 songs that this sound came out in 1996. It's just, I don't know. That's just, It's crazy to me. What'd you guys think of this? Did you what did you think of like the cover songs or some of the additional songs? What did you think of the original 3? Just real quick, right?
Sure. I really liked them. I thought the original 3, like you said, coming out in 1996, it's crazy that this sound came from it. Did you guys listen to the band Strong Arm when you guys were looking at this stuff?
I've listened to them before.
Sure.
Yeah.
Originally, though, Matt Fox and the guitarist or something were in a punk band together. And the Strong Arm dude said, I want to be in a ministry-based band. And because he was like, we could have been one band. Strong Arm and Shai Hulud, we pull influence from each other. Like he's like, when I want to go and like get inspiration, I go listen to them. But he's like, I wasn't ministry based. I wasn't doing that. So like they went their separate ways. So like 2 bands, both doing the melodic sound. These guys go way more melodic. And I think that they nailed it. It's interesting that Strong Arm goes ministry and these guys go hatred for man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like polar opposites. So, but no, I really like it. I think that I think it was For the World. I really like that song.
Yeah.
So I thought it was great.
Did you listen to this one, Josh?
Yeah, I thought it was okay. Like you say, talking about kind of like a sound to come out around this time. I think other bands that, you know, were kind of doing similar things was like, I guess other bands that are considered metalcore at that time, like Earth Crisis and things like that. I mean, I still to this day preferred like bands like Earth Crisis, but like I think going back, like kind of learning more of the history of Shai Hulud, like, you know, learning like how young some of these guys were and like all that stuff, like there's definitely more appreciation towards it. Nothing really stood out on the record. I don't think really anything stood out on any of these records. Maybe that's why I never really caught on to them as much. There wasn't like a defining song for them, but I was like,
Yeah.
oh, if you're going to listen to Shai Hulud, you need to listen to this song.
Yeah.
It was all just kind of, yeah, it's pretty good. They're good.
So I understand what you're saying and I agree with it, but I just feel like everything is so high that it's like, if I'm going to listen to Shai Hulud, I'm just going to listen to all of it. You know what I mean?
Well, it's like if I were to be like, hey, I really want to listen to Devil Wears Prada, like what would you suggest? You'd be like, oh, this album, these 3 songs, and if you like those, then listen to this album. But like you say with Shai Hulud, it's like it's all pretty good. Like it doesn't really matter what record. Like you should listen to it.
I get what you're saying. There's not like one song that it's like everybody in hardcore knows.
And
like
I think 100%. That one of the hard parts about what these guys did too is there's no memorable sing-alongs.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Most like bands, like once you like listen to them and you know the band, you know the songs, sure, you're going to pick up lyrics, you're going to pick up the parts where you can sing with the band and stuff. But there is like most bands have at least one or two songs, and this is to Josh's point, where there's very memorable sing-along parts. And I think that that's a little bit expressed in their top 5 on Spotify, excuse me, where Linoleum, the No Effects cover, is the number 2 song.
Right.
You have to go to a different band who has memorable sing-along parts to be like one of your top songs, you know? So I do think that is interesting.
Yeah. So next album is Hearts Once Nourished with Hopes and Compassion. This is 1997. This is the first album that has Chad Gilbert at 14, which is crazy when you go back and listen to it because you would never guess. I thought that this album held up very well for being an album from 1997.
Mm-hmm.
You hear, like Trevor was saying earlier, you definitely hear the influence in other bands from this album. Like, absolutely. You know, I don't think that they've hit their like stride yet, but I do think that they've really figured out what they're going to be. One thing I thought was funny is they have a song that calls out vegans in this album. And it makes me laugh because they toured a whole bunch with Earth Crisis, which have a whole album called Vegan for the Animals. So I don't know. I just thought that was kind of funny.
I think it's funny.
Yeah. But My Heart Bleeds, The Darkest Blood is like my favorite song. The build up at the end. And I just felt like the guitars, especially on this album, just go hard like the whole time. And I wanted to ask you, Josh, from like a guitar standpoint, like how freaking hard is it to play this kind of music live? Like it didn't feel like there's like rhythm parts. It's literally just like dueling guitars the whole time. Weird time changes, weird melody changes.
You have to have, for the weird time changes, you have to have a very confident drummer. Because if you don't have a drummer that can like, you have to have a drummer that understands flow, but understands like when to change time. Because if you have a really good drummer, they direct the entire band. But then with that, like especially dual guitars and stuff like that, you got to be very dependent and confident in both guitar players that you both know what you're doing. So sound check like on stage is like super crucial. Like there's been tons of times where I'll play with Tyler and like I'm looking at him and I cannot hear him at all. Like the crowd can hear him, but like my monitor's gone and I'm like,
yeah.
So then your whole dependency goes on the drummer. But if the drummer's off and the drummer can't hear what you guys are doing, and then it's just like, oh no, because that kind of music, it can go south so fast if somebody can't hear somebody or somebody gets off time. So
for sure,
it's not hard to write, I would say, but I think it's hard to definitely play and be consistently good at it.
Yeah.
So I think what's interesting about Shai Hulud and what I was saying, where they don't have breakdowns in there, is I do think that adds complexity to what they're writing. Because if you're writing a song, and Josh, you can obviously correct me if I'm wrong about this, right? But you can basically write your verse, your chorus, your bridge, breakdown, verse, chorus, right? Like it's very structured. These guys didn't have that. They had multiple different riffs, multiple different things going on where you would expect a breakdown to happen. They start putting something else in there. So there's just so many different riffs on riffs on riffs kind of thing where they're changing it up, moving things around, but then going back and like calling back to things that was earlier in the song. Like it's just a constant flow, a constant change. And I think that that's what's so interesting about these guys, and what actually kept me entertained is they break the norm of what you're expecting. And I am a very analytical, I'm very rigid. I like knowing structure of things, and these guys threw me off just because of that. So, like A Profound Hatred of Man, like that's a song where it kind of is doing what I'm saying. I really like that song off this album. I think it's great. Again, Chad sounds great on this album.
Yeah, he does.
So I think it holds up very well for 97.
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely. Cool. Sorry, Josh, do you have anything else? Or
I guess I'll just add like a different style of writing I learned probably when I was like 20, 19 or 20 from my buddy Matt, was trying to get out of the realm of structured writing of going like intro, verse, chorus, bridge, breakdown, chorus. But when you write like that, that's like how you hear everything on the radio. Everything on the radio is written like that, but that's like your standardized writing, and you try to get it all done within like 3 minutes time, right? That's like your average song. And he was trying to, break my pathway into writing things like riffs. Right. And that's like, Under Oath did that very well.
Yeah.
Because they broke from that. They were very much, their Only Chasing Safety album was very much like that, but Find the Great Line wasn't. So it was like, let's write a riff. And if the riff kills it, like, let's open up with that riff. Let's play it 4 times, but then let's play 2 times structured like this on the drums. And then let's like keep the tempo, but let's structure the drums like this. So it keeps it interesting, but like keeps that riff going. But then it's like, okay, now let's break into this part, but let's like change the time and throw everybody off. And then it's like, okay, let's write another riff. Now you've got 3 riffs, and it's like, okay, let's go back to that first riff because it was really good, and we'll just write kind of a slight intro back into it. And then that's when you start picking up your flow. But you start, like August Burns Red does that a lot as well.
Yeah.
They just write riffs on riffs on riffs, but a lot of the stuff kind of comes back to what they're originally doing.
Right.
No.
That's how I feel about Misery Signals too.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. That's another band. I thought about Poison the Well while I was listening to these guys.
Absolutely. I actually have that on my notes for the next album.
Yeah. All that kind of stuff all circles back to this. And to be, again, 96, 97 with this happening, I think is crazy. Interesting. So,
yeah. Cool. So next album, That Within Blood, Ill Tempered, 2003, took a little bit of a break. Chad did not do the vocals on this. They found a vocalist while touring in Europe. The guy just reached out to him and was like, hey, can I come hang out with you guys while you're touring? And they were like, sure. And so then he was like, hey, I can scream. And they're like, okay, try it. And then, yeah, that was it. They recorded this album. He was like from the Netherlands or something.
Yeah.
And they're playing this album at Furnace Fest. And this Dutch guy, Van Geert, is doing the vocals for it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, is that what's happening?
Yeah. So,
dang.
Yeah, pretty sick, right? I like this album. It's slower to me. I feel like this is where you get a lot of influence for bands like Poison the Well that have like that weird sound change that gets kind of slower. Defeater. I really like the album, but it didn't feel as much like traditional Shai Hulud, especially with what you get in the next 2 albums.
Mm-hmm.
What did you guys think of this one?
That Within Blood, Ill Tempered?
Yeah.
I thought it was a good step up from the album before, but it did stray a little differently. This album actually kind of reminded me more of the band that I was talking about, The Carrier.
Okay.
That what I can remember off the record.
Yeah.
Kind of a little slower, a little more emotion that I remember. I did see a huge difference between this record and the first one. I don't know if that's because Chad didn't have as much influence on this one. I don't know how much of this was written before Chad left.
I think it was all after Chad left. This one's kind of funny what Matt has said about this album. I was listening again to an interview with him, and he had a girlfriend at the time, and he was telling her, he's like, you've kind of ruined me. Like, I'm not pissed off at the world anymore. I can't write pissed off music. So Given Flight by Demon's Wings, he said, if I was ever to write a love song, that was my love song. He's like, lyrically, it's not a love song, but musically, like, it's more upbeat, it's lighter, it's not as aggressive, it's more just rock driven than hardcore driven kind of thing. So this album overall was a softer feel. So it is interesting because, again, it's all heavy. It's heavy without being heavy, but this one specifically does have a little bit of a softer feel to it. Given Flights by Demon's Wings is a fantastic song.
Yeah.
Like, so good. and it's probably their softest song that they wrote.
I saw that the album was delayed because of the artwork. I thought that's an interesting tidbit because I don't feel like you get that as much anymore. I don't feel like bands care as much about artwork anymore because
you can AI generate it.
Yeah, or you're just pulling it up on Spotify. Nobody's even looking at the artwork anyways, right? So I thought that was an interesting tidbit that he cared enough, not only about the music, but the artwork.
Well, I mean, that is interesting because that's something we don't even think about today. It affects album sales. You have to have the cover that you want. You don't want to rush it because people actually did care about the booklets. They cared about what things looked like. So you're absolutely right. It is a weird thing that we just won't have anymore.
No, I don't think we will. The only thing is like the vinyl revival going on and some of these posters getting put in.
Even that though, you can put the music on streaming services. People can listen to it forever.
Yeah.
You don't have to do your vinyl pressing for a year. You can do your vinyl pressing whenever you want, whenever the artwork's ready, but the music's already out. Like that's what No Cure just did. No Cure was a DIY vinyl press, right? But that album's been out for nearly a year before they just did their vinyls.
Sure.
So.
Yeah.
Well, this is like around 2003. So like the game is starting to change. Yeah. Like Hot Topic's starting to get bigger. People starting to kind of like be a little more wary like of what they were. Like they really cared like not what they had, but like I don't know, like if you guys ever did this, I'm probably just a weirdo that did, but like I always wanted like my cool CDs to show like in my room. You know, so like not even just album art, but like what the CD looked like. Because I don't know if you guys had CD booklets, but I wanted my CDs to look cool. Like, that was just the thing at the time.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. No, cool album. I like this album, but I kind of like the sound changes that not changes, but the sound advancements in the next couple albums. So they take another break a little bit. And 2008, they release Misanthropy Pure. Van Geert leaves before this album. I don't remember who the guy is that they pick up for this one. I can't remember his name, but I think he's my second favorite behind Chad because I think Chad's vocals in this and the next one are way better.
Mm-hmm.
But this is my favorite album musically. I felt like it was really tight. The production's a lot better in 2008. Obviously, it's better. It's less melodic and felt more metalcore-y, right?
Mm-hmm.
Feels a little heavier. Yeah, gets more metallic, I guess is the word that I wrote down. The song Misanthropy Pure is probably my favorite Shai Hulud song in general. And honestly, probably one of my favorite melodic hardcore songs ever.
It's so good
as well.
So I think the guy's name was Matt Mazzali is who's the vocals on this one.
Okay.
And the one thing about this album specifically, Shai Hulud was pretty good at this in their other ones, but you can listen to, I think it's the first 4 or 5 songs, and you don't really know where the one ends and the next one begins unless you're just like individually listening to them, like pulling them out. It kind of goes through the first 15 minutes of this album just consecutively, which is awesome. I love albums that do that where like songs bleed into each other. You don't really know. And what we were talking about where it's just like riff after riff after riff after riff, like it just keeps hitting you. I was listening to this one in the shower today while I was getting ready, and that's what was just happening. I'm like, I don't even know what song I'm on. Like, I don't know how many songs I've listened to.
It's a weird album to crank your hog to.
Bro, like, what is happening right now, man? You're sitting there with a frown on your face. You're hating humankind. And you're thinking about wieners every Tuesday.
All right, Josh, what do you think about this album?
Oh man. That was pretty cranking. I I don't know, it was good. This started to kind of remind me of the vocals a lot of Defeater.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
More melodic than Defeater, obviously, but I think it sounded, as far as production wise, I think it started to sound a lot better. And it wasn't, I liked it that it wasn't, especially around this time, it wasn't like fake, all computer generated. Like it still felt very real and raw, just like you were saying, a lot tighter. So.
Yeah. Before I cut you off, Trevor, do you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I'm probably done talking the rest of the episode.
All right.
Just kidding. No, it's a really good album. It's probably my second favorite album that they put out. The next one we're talking about, Reach Beyond the Sun, this takes the crown for me. I think that this album's fantastic.
Yeah. So this album's 2013. Chad comes back, right?
Yeah. And I think it was kind of a surprise. Like they had announced that he was producing for them and they were recording with him. And then when recording wrapped up, they're like, oh, by the way, Chad did the vocals. So it was kind of a different thing there. And it's faster. This is a faster album overall. And I am a huge fan of this one. The song Reach Beyond the Sun is incredible. Just that fast beat right off the bat. It's different than the other stuff they put out there. Medicine to the Dead, great. Man into Demon, that's an awesome song. Like, this is my favorite album. I listened to this one probably 4 or 5 times through, going through everything with these guys.
Yeah. So it's probably my second favorite album. I think Misanthropy Pure is my favorite. But this album is it's so good. And Chad didn't miss a beat, man. Like he stepped right back into it and it was like he never left. It was incredible. I read that like Matt Fox was saying that it was really weird to have him back because he's like, we've pretty much lived a whole life now apart from each other, right? Like you go from 14, 15 years old and then all of a sudden nothing for like almost, what is it, like 15 years and almost 20 years, right? And he's like, it was very interesting to kind of relearn and get to know each other and redevelop that chemistry. And he's like, we argued a bunch, but it was always arguments that like were for the greater good of the songs. And he was like, I'm very proud of what we put out and stuff. And I was like, that's a really kind of interesting concept because it was cool that Chad always was like involved with Shai Hulud. Like they toured together. He was always like a part of it, even though he wasn't doing vocals for it. And then to come back and record this album, it was incredible.
How big of a kick in the nuts would it be though? That like you invited this 14-year-old kid to come play in like your band. He leaves, becomes king in one of the best pop punk bands to ever live, and then comes back.
Freaking marries Hayley Williams.
Or whatever. And is like, and now it's like, and now, well, you know what I mean? Now it's like, hey, he's like, I don't know. And he comes back. I'm sure he's not like this, but it's just like, hey, like, I'll come do vocals for Shai Hulud. And it's like, oh,
so
14-year-old kid anymore. Now you're like, oh, all right. What are we doing?
It's interesting that you're saying this because Matt actually brought this up in multiple interviews that I read. And when Chad decided to leave Shai Hulud and pursue Newfound Glory full time, there was like no bad blood. So basically what Matt said is, number one, he's 7 years younger than us. Number two, Chad had basically zero input into Shai Hulud in the early days. He's like, he was 7 years younger than us. Anything he said, we just threw out the window because he was a little kid. Like, he couldn't write hatred of man lyrics kind of thing. Like, he was too little. So they like just didn't listen to him. He was like, Newfound Glory was Chad's band with his friends in high school, and he was the number one writer. We all could see that Newfound Glory was going to be absolutely huge. There was no bad blood when he told us that he was going to pursue that full time because they had just gotten signed. He's like, it made all the sense in the world. So, they were very, very accepting, happy for Chad about that situation, which I thought was really cool. So then, like you said, now they're touring together. Newfound Gore's the headliner. Shai Hulud's opening for them. They've continued to maintain their relationships and stuff. The interesting thing I think about this is 2013. Chad just put out What's Eating Gilbert, like the most poppy, folky, weird crap out there. He's in incredibly pop punk bands. Sure, he did the International Superheroes of Hardcore, but that's kind of like a gimmick, right? He freaking throws down on this album. Yeah. It's incredible. So, kudos to Chad for being able to do that. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah. So, and then I think the last thing they did was just some of the stuff from Sincere, Just Can't Hate Enough, right? Or is that that's just a couple songs and then a bunch of covers too, right?
Re-releases, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I would give anything to get that jacket that's on the cover.
Sincerely Hated.
Yeah. The varsity jacket with Sincerely Hated on the back.
Yeah, that's pretty dope.
I would if they sell that at Furnace Fest, I'm dropping big money on it.
Yeah. So. What did you think about these 3 songs?
They were good. I'm not to say about it. They're good.
I really like them. Colder Than the Cold World, incredible. Such a good, just hardcore song, right?
It's very hardcore. These songs, right? Very much hardcore. Influence.
Which is interesting. This is the first time that they actually feel like they have, not the first time, but they have more structure in these songs than they have in their other discography, I feel like. So maybe they ran out of the craziness. I don't know. Right. But it's awesome. I like all 3 of these. Been
doing it for 30 years at this point.
Yeah.
Just whatever comes out, just right out. No one cares,
Yeah.
But
ran out of cranks on the old hog.
Holy cow.
On that note,
I'm incredibly excited to see these guys at Furnace Fest. And
how excited are you?
I mean, I don't know. No, I wasn't good. I'm not going to say what I was going to say. Never mind. We should probably end this. You know how we keep getting marked for explicit on Apple? It's crap like this.
Just make sure you keep your camera waist high.
You're right. I'm not wearing pants right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man.
So, I got nothing else. Good band. Pumped to see him in October.
Yeah. I'm really excited. Album wise, if I was to recommend these guys, like Josh said, you really can listen to anything and get an idea of who they are. I would say Reach Beyond the Sun is my favorite. Misanthropy Pure was my second. But then their first 3 albums, really, you can go listen to anything. If you like Chad, go listen to Hearts Once Nourished with Hope and Compassion.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Good stuff. Got anything else, Josh? Anything you want to add about this band?
No, dude, I'm still dying over this. Over this Crank It comment. That's gonna kill me the rest of the day.
That's our new shirt. Crank It.
That's a weird band to crank your rock to.
All right. Well, I've got to clean this one up. So, okay.
Don't do it, man. Leave it.
All right. I think is it because me next, right? Josh did Devil Wears Prada. You did Shy, so it's back to me. All right. Yeah. I'll figure out what we're doing then. So, dope.
Cool beans.
Okay. Cool beans. Catch you guys next week.
Cool beans.
Peace.
All right, see you.